May I please have your full and undivided attention? It is time for the Paranormal Rundown. Hello, this is Cedric Dankworth Smythe. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all fans of the paranormal, the supernatural, the unusual, the entertaining, the terrifying, the horrifying, and those things that go bump in the night and in the daytime too. This is the one and only Paranormal Rundown, where the lads, the gang of nerds, choose from over 2,700 carefully curated paranormal topics. I must say, the lads, the gang of nerds, did an outstanding job this episode of covering a variety of topics, including the Hopkinsville Goblins, Satanists in the desert, Manga of all kinds, Japanese graveyards, Bigfoot Mimicry, genuine psychics, and the Mandela Effect, as well as much, much more. Strap in. It's going to be an interesting ride.
Hello, everybody. This is Vic Hermanson. I am here tonight for the Season 2, Episode 7, Halloween Extravaganza of the Paranormal Rundown. We've coined a new word here tonight where we are going to consciously make an effort to make the show, which, even though it says Paranormal Rundown, man, we'll pretty much talk about anything. But for tonight, we're in honor of Halloween, Sam Hain, and in honor of our extra special guest, Chris James of Strange Things with Chris James, we are going to try to keep the conversation spookarific. Anybody? So, if you haven't heard that word spookarific today, I'm planning on copywriting it tomorrow. As you know, we have 2,720, I don't know, something, topics on the Paranormal Rundown list. We use a random number generator to give us 6 of them. It's been weighted a little bit to make it a little more spookarific. So 5 will be from the spookarific category, and 1 will be from the everything category. So because we have people who've already been recording for most of the day, let's go ahead and throw out some topics. And if we, so we're going to take a vote. We're going to take topics. Do we like this one or do we not? If we don't, we're just going to move right on.
Right. Well, before you start, it's Samhain. As Chris will tell you.
It is
because
Samhain,
words
right?
matter.
Yeah. Words do indeed matter. I just can't look at that word and figure out how it's Samhain.
I don't know how you get there from that, but he did an episode on how words matter. I forget the exact name of the episode. And so, Chris, I just want to let you know that I felt like that episode was literally about me. Apparently, you've been listening to our show a lot because you were basically calling out all of my bad speech habits. I felt totally decimated.
Totally decimated.
Anyways, I just thought I would mention
that word does not mean what people think it does. To decimate is to reduce by 10%.
To reduce by 10%, yes.
It was a Roman judgment against troops. If their unit was found to be cowardice or anything bad during battle, they would be given the judgment of decimation, which meant 9 out of every 10 of the members had to kill the 10th man. They had to beat him to death with a stick.
I wonder what they did when the best guy in your platoon drew the short stick.
Heck out of it.
You know, I mean, it's like, yeah, okay, you know, we've got Decimus and Quintus, and we've got Gaius and, Valerian. You know, we've got all these different guys. And, man, Valerian screws up all the time.
Yep.
But Spartacus, man, he's good. And then sure enough, you pull that stick out and, well, sorry, Spartacus, old buddy, but you got to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just thought that was a great episode, but I was cringing
Yeah.
quite often in the midst of it.
And by the way, I prefer the term not spookerific, but rather ghostastic.
Ghostastic.
Ghostastic. Nice.
Okay.
I like
Anybody else have any personal preferences for the way we're trying to do the subjects tonight? All right. We have six topics. Next week, I'm going to be able to share my screen because I'll finally have my new computer up and doing what it's supposed to do. Topic 1 is JOTS, Jotts, which means just one of those things. Topic 2 is the Palmyra Wolves, which was a Maine family that were stalked by very unusual wolves. Number 3 is Whitley Strieber in Communion. Number 4 is a movie quote. It has nothing to do with Satan, Mama. It's me, which comes from Carrie. Number 5 is lizard people. And as you know, lizard people are everywhere. They're in our schools, they're in our government, they're in our corporate centers. They're just everywhere, and they're running the world. And so that's the topic. And number 6 is the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter, where if you listen to the mainstream media, they spent an entire evening shooting at barred owls.
I
we got
that
heavy
one.
on alien topics on this.
Heavy on
Nice.
alien topics, but this is pretty spookerific.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I think.
According to the Dewey Decimal System,
Uh-huh.
UFOs, Bigfoot, witchcraft, they're all paranormal.
Yes, they are.
They're all under 130.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of like that Hopkinsville Goblins, as they were known.
I do too.
That-
All right, show of hands out of the 5 of us who has a working knowledge of the Hopkinsville incident.
Uh-oh.
I don't
little
know about it, but I'm interested.
All right, Chris, you want to give us a
Very
quick overview?
yeah. I can't give any dates because
I
I
can't
can't
either.
remember dates to save my life. A family was staying out in the countryside in Kentucky, Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And they had an outside well that you had to walk out to get water. And one of the brothers walked out to the well to get some water, and he said he saw some really weird looking lights in the sky. Then once he walked back inside, everybody had come out to see what he was talking about, and then they went back inside. These strange looking, they described them as being gremlins, started coming at the house. The people inside the house, being in Kentucky, everybody had a gun, and they started shooting at these things. And they shot all night long trying to keep these things. They were on the roof. They were trying to get in through the windows, to the door. They tried calling the sheriff's department. I don't remember, the phone was out, or the sheriff couldn't get to them, some such. Finally, when the sheriff's deputy did finally get there, he noted the fact that there were shells everywhere. There were holes all over the house.
The screen door had been blown out.
Yep. If it was an entryway, it had been shot at because something was trying to get in through it. And then the boys in the white lab coats came out and said they were barn owls. I have never in my life heard of barn owls attacking people in a house, but what can you do? Also, a lot of TV shows like to imply, because these people lived in Kentucky, they were probably drinking. I don't know what living in Kentucky has to do with drinking, but that's what they were implying. That's what they pretty much came out and said. They were all drunk. That's why they saw goblins when they were actually looking at owls. And
Well,
Is
there,
it-
go ahead.
well, I was going to say, isn't Hopkinsville also where Edgar Casey was born
Yes, it is. I believe.
and buried?
Aha.
I'm wondering if there's a connection.
That's a very, very
Could be.
good question.
Well,
That's-
if you're insulting people in Hopkinsville, then you might as well be insulting people in Illinois in addition to Kentucky, since it's right on the border.
Ohio, Virginia.
And Illinois. Yep.
The people that fly over states are always looked down on by those people.
Boy, they really
elites.
are. The flyover states.
Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely one of the reasons that I wanted to create the Paranormal Rundown, was because I was just really tired of academia, of newspapers, of TV shows, just living in the giggle factor universe. I'm just really tired of it. With this constant implication that if you aren't part of downtown New York, if you aren't part of the media center of Hollywood or Los Angeles, or if you're not part of Washington, you don't have two brain cells to rub together.
No, I have at least three.
The three, right? Yeah. You don't, and I got to tell you, you take a guy from Washington, who's gone to Georgetown, and you put him out in the Kentucky woods. He's not at an advantage.
No, in fact, he's probably going to go snipe hunting.
Yeah.
It brings to mind that show I did called They Said What? Where I was talking about some of the really stupid things all of these really smart people kept saying. How do you spell potato?
Apparently, that event, the Hopkinsville event, is the inspiration for the movie Critters.
Yes,
Oh, really?
I'd heard that. One of those really, this much information was made into a story that big, based on an actual event, which it's kind of like the first book I ever wrote. I wished I hadn't written it, but I did. It was called The Rag Man.
Oh,
Because of a song. And it was a golem type creature. And
Made by a
wife,
rabbi?
Well, the rabbi didn't get involved. This was more of the dark side. The whole idea was I had seen these Satanists down on the river back in, I think it was 1989. And they're the kind of thing kind of mess up your night. And me and my partner, we both swore we'd never talk about it because you didn't want the reputation as being that kind of person. Oh, those guys, they see things. Let's assign them to checkpoint the rest of their lives. So I talked to Art Bell about it on his radio show, The Dark Matter. And after I'd been on national air, everybody, I already had my 20 years in, so it didn't matter what they thought. My wife told me I should write a book about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the whole incident took maybe 2 minutes. The
That's all
book
it
would be
takes.
about that thick. Who's going to want to read that? And she said, well, embellish it a little. That's another word for lying, isn't it? So no. Turn it into a fictional story based on an actual event. So I managed to take this 2-minute incident and I turned it into about a 200-page book that, well, I didn't know what I was doing, but that didn't stop me.
Well, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't
Stop you. Well, two things.
I don't even have a copy of it.
I'm sorry about that. There's got to be a file on a computer somewhere. Or
I've got that. It's just, I never bought a copy for myself.
So two things. One totally unrelated to anything. You've used Josh has used this great spookarific Halloween or ghost-tastic Halloween background.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's got jack-o'-lanterns, it's got bats, and old trees and a full moon. But Josh, when you turn your head a certain way, you look like the guy in the Goonies, the John Matuzak character. Yes.
You're coming home with me. I'll take care of you forever.
I mean, you suddenly have this big, swelling place on your head, and it kind of comes together in the middle. It's not real. It's just an illusion made, but I got to tell you, I may have to watch Chris because it's been distracting me. It's been...
Made me think of the aliens with the big tall head.
Well, what did you see in this 2 minutes?
You never told that story on y'all's show? Okay.
You may have, but
we had just gotten to Laredo from the academy.
Uh-huh.
And we were shorthanded because our class, we tripled the number of people at the station. So they couldn't put an experienced agent with a trainee. So they'd put two trainees together and tell us to stay out of trouble and send us down the river. It's not rocket science, but there is still some skill to the job.
Right.
So we're driving along down 83 South, and we come to this area. It's called McAllister Hill. And we look, and just the other side of the hill, we can see a flickering light. It looks like a bonfire. Now, because the manpower had been so scarce at Laredo South forever, the smugglers, they just ran the south side of town like it was theirs. They didn't ever expect to see a Border Patrol agent on the south side. So we're like, let's sneak down there. Maybe it's a dope load. Because you come across that river, you're going to be all wet and cold, and you might want to warm up. Or maybe it's a signal light for the bad guys so they know where to bring the dope. No, we're trainees. We don't know. So we drive down this road into an area called One River Place. It's 1 mile south of the rest area. We had names like that for everything. We had a button under the dashboard that we could push, and it would kill all the lights in the vehicle. Tail lights, reverse lights, everything. Because you don't want to sneak up on somebody and then step on the brake pedal and there's the big red light. So we push the button. I'm driving. We go down this paved road towards the river. Then we turn off the paved road onto a gravel road. And then from that, we wind around through the mesquite trees. And we come up over kind of a little rise in the hill. And here is 15 to 20 people standing around a bonfire. They've got on full-length dark robes with the hood. They got their hands up in the air. And you ever see a movie called Race with the Devil? Peter Fonda, Warren Oates, a bunch of other people I can't think of. And they come across these people having a satanic ritual. And then through the rest of the movie, they're being chased. It does not have a happy ending. If you've never seen it, it's one of those movies you got to see. Preferably on a Saturday afternoon when nothing else is on. I'm thinking of that movie because I'm looking at it through the windshield of our vehicle. I don't know if my partner had seen the same movie, but all of a sudden he's encouraging me to get the heck out of there. We're both armed, but there's like 20 people. And a couple of them turned, looked at us, and they started in our direction. I did some real quick observing, and I said, I don't see any federal laws being violated here. I don't see anybody being sacrificed. Let's get the heck out of here. So I threw it in reverse, and we got the heck out of there. It's fast. Now, I don't have any reverse lights. I don't have any brake lights. I'm flying backwards up a gravel road that's about 2 feet wider than the vehicle I'm driving. I made a sharp left-hand curve in the dark. I made a second sharp left-hand curve, threw it into drive, and we got the heck out of there to the highway. And then we spent the rest of the evening trying to decide, do we report this to somebody? Who do we report this to? We finally came to the conclusion that the best thing we could do is to not talk about it to anybody, which I did for 20 years until, once you get that 20 years in, you're one bad day away from just quitting and with full retirement. When people heard me on Art Bell's show talking about that incident, I started getting contacted by other agents that told me they had seen the exact same thing, but in a different part of town. One saw it in San Ignacio, which is about 30 miles south of Laredo. Another guy saw it in Laredo, only it was over towards the college side. Another person said he's seen it it was a vacant field that later became the country club. All over the place. I'm trying to remember. I think I'm up to about 6 different people.
So this grouping of 20 or so Satanists were finding various places where they could perform whatever ritual or whatever they were doing.
No bodies, as far as I could tell. No dead people.
So, so in your book, I'm assuming that this gathering had the goal of making a golem.
Well, the golem was used to control the people of the group, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Horrible book. Lots of bloodshed.
Hello, this is Avalon Leanne Dankworth's life, and this is the first of 3 Avalon's educational moments you will hear this evening. Lucky you. In the year 1589, the Jews of Prague were threatened with a blood accusation, and Rabbi Lowe, who was a master of Kabbalistic art, received a mysterious message from on high which impelled him to adopt an extraordinary device for combating the danger. In the company of his son-in-law and one of his disciples, he formed the figure of 8 man from clay. And after various incantations, he succeeded in breathing into the figure the breath of life, and the golem, as it was called, rose like an ordinary human being, lacking only the power of speech. The principal purpose for which the golem was employed was to assist the rabbi in unearthing and defeating conspiracies against the Jews. In the year 1584, for instance, Rabbi Lowe received secret information of an attempt to poison the salt supplied to the community. He equipped the golem with an amulet which rendered him invisible, and sent him to make investigations on the premises of bakers whom he had reason to suspect. The golem succeeded in his quest, and discovered a packet of poison, with which 2 assistants, who were in the pay of the anti-Semites, hoped to poison the whole community. The men confessed, and the Jews of Prague were saved.
Horror is easy to write.
Oh, yeah.
You splash blood on everything.
Well, look,
Kill off a whole bunch of people really bad ways.
I'm surprised that Shudder hasn't contacted you to make a movie about it.
The thing about horror, the horror fans, some of them are not right in the head.
That's true.
If they don't absolutely love your story, they will contact you and let you know exactly when and where you screwed up, how many times you screwed up, how big. I was getting sick and tired of getting emails from people that didn't like my style of writing. So I decided, because I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to switch over to humor. Remember, I said horror is easy?
Yes.
Humor is horrible to try to write.
I would agree.
My sense of humor is not what other people are going to think is funny. So I would tell my wife a particular situation in the book. Oh, the book was called Flying Saucers Attack Walmart.
That's a good title.
All of the colorful people in it are real people that I have met. In the back of the book, I explained who all these people were and where I saw them and just how deep down the hole their heads were. But I kept telling my wife, okay, how about this, and this? And she'd go, no, you're not right. You're not putting that in the book.
She became your editor.
Yes. But I kept trying. And finally I said something to her. I don't remember what it was. And she actually laughed. And I thought, okay, I'm on to something here. So I just kept going. And eventually I did write a book called Flying Saucers Attack Walmart.
So does Walmart have a defense mechanism?
No. What had happened was the aliens were using an old map of the area from like the 1960s. And they didn't know that modern progress was going to happen. And somebody built a store right where they're going to land their craft. And so they come down on the roof of the store, and all the people of Walmart, you know, the folks you see running around in the hospital, Johnny, with nothing on.
You see some rather
Yes.
casual people at Walmart sometimes.
You
Yeah.
see things you wish you didn't see.
Yes,
Well,
you do.
Sometimes,
people-
no doubt.
Those people have to come together to save the planet.
Oh, I think that's a really good plot.
Well,
I mean, the
And
thing,
lots of opportunities.
yeah,
there
but the
for
thing
humans.
is, though, once again, this is the Vic Hermanson view of this. Yeah, these guys are, they're not exactly polished, but, you know, they're not going to do well at a upscale Wall Street dinner party, but they're a lot smarter than people give them credit for.
some of them.
Some of and,
Put this on some. I have worked at a Walmart. But you know, Chris, it's weird that you bring that up, because my mom, she had an encounter with a weird, she doesn't know what it was. To this day she still doesn't, but she was in Clarksville, Tennessee, hanging out in the park with my father, and this is before that they were married, and they were sitting on a park bench. It was totally dark, and then they start seeing a crowd of people beginning to walk toward them. They were dressed in black. The people said nothing. They weren't running, but they were very determinedly walking toward them. And so, and because the entire thing was being done in silence, they got freaked out. And so they hopped in her Mustang and tried to start it. And of course, it flooded out just like you would see in horror movies. They finally got it, but the people were right at the hood and beginning to like crash their hands down upon it when she finally spun out and got out of there. But the entire thing was silent. And that's what freaked them out more than anything in the world.
That is weird.
They may have missed an upfront and close view of a satanic sacrifice.
well,
They might have been the
also
guest
had,
of honor.
I know.
Well, they also,
a very up close and personal view.
you know, could have
I'm
learned a
very
whole lot
glad that
about.
they missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've always got this thought in my mind. Okay, I get a bunch of my buddies together. We're going to go be jackasses. You know, we're going to walk slowly and kind of shuffle, and we're going to, you know, maybe even do some little growling and things. And, you know, we're going to go over and we're going to start pounding on the hood of this Mustang, which has 382 horsepower and is more than happy just to roll right over your keister. And you know, maybe other people are more controlled than I am, but I had no trouble. I would have no trouble rolling over somebody that I thought was going to kill me.
Accurate.
What's that?
Accurate. Highly
Yeah.
accurate.
No problem at all.
I'd be more inclined to use my pistol because I wouldn't want to dent my front end on my truck. But
Oh, yes. Well, that's true. That's true, right? Very
back
good.
over, the back bumper is a lot stronger than the front.
Very good allocation of resources.
People, especially youngins, high school, college age folks, sometimes they can do incredibly stupid things,
Oh, yes.
thinking what could possibly go wrong. How many people wound up in the emergency room after saying that? What can possibly go wrong?
Well, in Texas,
Well, and that's
a
not
whole
even a
bunch.
thought in it. They're not even thinking what could go wrong. That's just not even a consideration in the hey, this looks like a good idea. Let's do this. Yeah, I've done stupid stuff.
Well,
That's how you get experience. That's how
That's
you
right.
know. That's how you know you shouldn't like touch a exhaust pipe on a running vehicle or step between a truck that's backing up in a mud pile. Things like that. That's how you look. That
Well,
which doesn't
it is-
kill you does make you smarter.
yes,
It does make you smarter.
Yes, that's true. It does make you smarter, or at least more aware of how bad things can go.
Never going to do that again.
It does make you wonder how much of this ritualistic stuff happens. So you're talking about how big of an area that these guys are seen in? I mean, we're talking a 20-mile area, a 10-mile area.
From Laredo to San Ignacio is 30 miles. That's
30
another
miles.
county.
Okay.
So that's a ways out there. I haven't heard anything up Mines Road. So it's one of those things. Somebody has to be there to see it happening, and then they have to report it to me. So, like I said,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've only had six people tell me about seeing these. But
that's 6 sightings,
Mhm.
and then you've got to wonder: is it the same group?
It
Are there
sounds
more
the
than
same.
one group?
Full length, dark robes, hood over their face so you can't see anything. Look kind of like trying to think what it looked like. If y'all, what's that movie? Phantasm?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
The creatures that were inside the tuning fork when you look through, there's all these hooded characters that look like that. But taller.
Well, that would get your attention.
It does make it. A lot of things go on that people don't see.
Yes.
People ignore it. A lot of folks say, for example, with me and my partner, we saw these folks and we decided we're not going to tell anybody because they're going to think we're crazy. How many people out there have had an experience like this where they just decide, no, I'm not talking about that? That's everybody's going to.
So you kept that silent for 20 years, essentially.
Yes.
Okay, I kept my experience silent for 22, 23 years.
Mhm.
That kind of seems to be the time period. Somewhere around 20 years, people say, yeah, I'm going to talk about this now.
For me, it was financial reasons. Like I said, once you hit that 20-year mark, you're one bad day from retiring. It's like, I've had enough of your nonsense. Here's my
Enough of your
badge.
nonsense. Well, speaking of doing stupid things, I mean, what the article I was reading about the Hopkinsville guys said, well, we have 2 primary theories. One, of course, spoken in the these guys are dum-dums voice. We have 2 primary theories. One is that you can't imagine how close this house is to the railroad. So what if a bunch of bored railroad guys decided that they would stop the train, get off the train, and try to convince the people in this house that they were invading aliens?
People with guns.
People with guns, yeah. People with guns who've been using those guns since they were 5 or 4 and really, really know how to use them. Well, you'd end up with 5 or 6 dead railroad guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what would happen there. And then they said, and then we think if that's not the case, it was the great horned owl. A whole flock of great horned owls getting together to attack this house. A great horned owl weighs 3.5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a very big bird. No, it's all fluffy. Yeah, it's got feathers, but it's not the kind of thing that a country boy is going to think is threatening him.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen the image that was drawn?
Yeah,
of these Hopkinsville these critters.
Right.
So they're 3 feet tall,
little legs, big old chest.
They've got these tall ears.
Mm-hmm.
They've got these funky eyes.
They look like the gremlins that had transformed in the movie.
Right. There's and I know I've mentioned it before, the series Hellier. Have you seen that, Chris? It's a series that was done. It was by Greg and Dana Newkirk and a couple other folks, and he was following up. Somebody had contacted him from an old paranormal investigation group email that he had that had been inactive for years, and he got this email to come check out. This guy was having these goblins in his backyard, and he lived on the other side of Kentucky. So Hellier's like 5.5 hours east of Hopkinsville. Mm-hmm. But it was like 3 foot tall. He called them goblins. Didn't have the pointy ears, but this whole story, and that's how I knew about the Hopkinsville ones. I've seen the image before from Hellier. They talk about this case a little bit. And the fascinating thing is, it's not really their thoughts were, it's not necessarily like a UFO's landing in the backyard and these goblins are coming out and messing with people. They think it's from living in the caves and the old mines.
Which
because
in
there
Kentucky
are
is just
networks of mines and caves that go forever.
oh, in Kentucky, you've got these. I guess you have the biggest network of caves in the world.
Merrimack Cavern. They don't know how many entrances there are to that thing. They were constantly finding new passageways, exploring them and hoping that they would connect them. That's how that guy got stuck in that one
Ooh,
cave.
oh,
I saw that movie when I was like 5, 6 years old, and I could never go in a cave. The one with Kirk Douglas.
was this? This is one of the guys who got stuck in a position where they just
Yes.
couldn't get him out.
Yes.
They could talk to him.
Yes.
You know, hey, listen,
Through the
Bubba.
whole movie, he was in there for like a week. And
Right.
through the whole movie, I kept thinking, like, how's he going to the bathroom?
Well,
I was a little kid. I was
you're a little kid. Yeah.
There's only one way.
This hadn't occurred to you yet.
Well,
Well,
and the other thing is, if these people had lived in the area for their whole lives, then there's no way that kind of misidentification could happen. You know, people know the difference where I'm from between a Dutch whippoorwill and a regular whippoorwill. Or I remember one time I was outside smoking on my back deck at my mom's house, completely dark, and I heard a woman scream off in the woods. I ran into the house going, there's someone back there screaming. And my mom and my uncle looked at me and bust out laughing. They're like, no, that's a screech owl.
Right. Or a bobcat, which can make a really frightening, screaming kind of sound.
or a fox.
Or a fox.
Well,
But
and,
if you
and
live
how
out
do
there-
you get from 3 feet tall
Right.
to the size of an owl?
Well,
You know, which would be what, a foot and a half max for a great horned? How tall does a great horned get?
well, I mean, not 3 feet tall.
It's not 3 feet tall.
No, it's
not,
more like
you know, it's not
18
that
inches
huge.
tall or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is feather.
Yep. So and you unless it was a bunch of little people hopping off a train to mess around with the people.
Well,
you
it
know,
was
and-
the Alien Express train.
yeah.
Full of aliens. Well, I'm going to speculate just a second. If I look at the picture of this critter, whatever this critter might be, it looks like it's made to brachiate. It's got these really super long arms. It's like it's made to, grab onto a limb and swing for a while and grab onto another limb. It looks like it's made to brachiate. Or if it's not brachiating, it'd be far more useful in a zero-G environment to have long arms that you could reach out and grab things with than legs. Okay, your feet don't grab things very well, but your hands do. So it could have been evolved for life in a zero-G environment or brachiating, but I don't think it
Now,
was an
would
owl.
that be beneficial for navigating caves?
It would be very beneficial for navigating caves, as would those big old eyes.
The theory that they put forth on Hellier about these things was that at one point, perhaps, there was an alien crash and they took to the caves to survive
Ooh, that's a good one.
and then adapted. And so,
That sounds like
the
the story out of
eyes.
the Grand Canyon. The Indians tell a story about a flying saucer crashed in the Grand Canyon and the beings lived in the area.
Lived in the area. Did they live in caves in the Grand Canyon?
Yes.
So these were aliens that mutated over time. Okay, because they they had to live in this totally dark environment. That's a good story.
Yeah, I thought so. That's a great series. I wish they'd make another season of it. They did 2 seasons, and then it's been on hold for other projects, but it's done very well.
Well, so my consensus is that although you do have some overreactive dum-dums in Kentucky and every other state, for the most part, they're smarter than the media.
Well, and I think there was enough documentation, enough consistency to the story and everything else that I think it's just excuses to not believe them. Everything that was proposed.
And the media likes to ridicule people.
Absolutely.
All right. I think that was a really good first roll.
Yeah.
We had a couple of good rabbit holes. We didn't go too deep into any particular rabbit hole. So
before we switch topics, before we pick another one, Chris, you did a book on UFO encounters, right?
Yes.
Just
In
recently,
fact,
yeah.
It's my latest book, which all my copies are out in the RV for reasons of my truck breaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great truck adventure.
And
What was the name of it?
It's called UFOs. Because
UFOs?
I couldn't think of something better to call it. I see so many people, they'll write a book and then they'll give it this elaborate name. And it's like, too many words.
Too many words, yeah. Just UFOs.
UFOs. And I don't use the term UAPs. I hate it.
I do too.
Even though Lou Elizondo likes it. I'm reading his
I
book right
get
now.
the intent of it. I get the intent because you got now multi-cross medium craft. It's not necessarily flying all the time. So
a flying saucer can be triangular shaped. It can be boomerang shaped. It can look like two plates stuck together. It's still a flying saucer, even though it doesn't look saucer shaped.
Yeah.
That's how the name has become
evolved.
Yeah, evolved.
Yep.
The same thing with UFO. If it's under the water, it's still a UFO.
I'm all for the UFO. I get what they're trying to do, I guess.
You can go to.
I'm with you. I don't like it.
You can go to Russia. I think you can go to Japan, and you'll see a big sign, UFO, in English wording. Even though, like in Russia, where they have that weird backwards R, they'll still put UFO in great big letters. You know what the heck they're talking about.
Everybody knows what it is.
You know what it is.
In Japanese, it's a UFO. Is how they say
UFO.
it. Yeah. And Chris,
they say that.
You would absolutely hate the trend for Japanese works that's currently going on, which is let's give it the most long title humanly possible.
It's like scientific papers that people come up with.
No, these are just like manga and anime. Like, is it wrong to pick up girls in the dungeon? And that's like the most tame one.
I saw that somewhere, and I was wondering what the heck they were talking about.
So, JJ, in the Japanese UFO mangas or whatever they are, do they have UFOs piloted by pubescent girls in tiny skirts with huge eyes?
Actually, it's funny you bring that up. There's an anime out this season called Dandadan.
Yeah.
And it's actually really bloody good. I haven't watched the latest episode that just came out today. But in the first episode, it's a guy and a girl. The guy really believes in UFOs, and the girl really believes in ghosts. And so they challenge each other to go to a spot which is known for each. So the girl's in a hospital, which has supposedly had a whole bunch of alien abductions, and the guy goes to a really famous haunted tunnel. He gets chased out by a spirit called Turbo Granny and possessed. She gets abducted by 3 aliens that want to impregnate her. And then they wind up like he comes and saves her. But yeah, it's just it was kind of funny. It's a great show too.
I'm sorry. I just
well,
all I could think of was the Dragnets thing when you said the name, and all I could think of was dun 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 dun.
ba-dum. Well, we got to
What
use
was it called? Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Yep.
dun dun dun.
Okay.
We've got
I
to
don't
use.
think I could. I don't think I could last 5 minutes in Japan just because of some of the rules they've got. They just
They're very forgiving.
They're very forgiving of.
They are.
ask my wife if I'm in a crowd. I'm
Yes.
going to say things, whether
Yes,
they
ma'am.
want to listen or
I do too. But we got to use that term, turbo granny, somewhere.
Yeah.
That's a real winner. I mean, I guess the book that they would write about the Hopkinsville guys would be something like of barred owls and brainless rednecks. Something very, very insulting.
Well, Chris, what was your favorite UFO story in your book?
the vanishing airplane simply because it's a video. A guy that we have contact with, he's actually from Nuevo Laredo. And he had just gotten a brand new cell phone and he was putting it to the test out in the backyard. And there's a plane flying over his house because he lives south of the airport. So he just brings his camera up and he's videoing, I was going to say videotaping. He's getting a video of this plane. The tail section vanishes. You can see the clouds on the other side of the tail. It's not like it pixelates or anything. It's gone. Then the wings disappear. Then the fuselage seems to shorten to a point where this thing looked almost like a flying saucer. And me,
Wow.
Ishmael, and another guy, I'm trying to think of who brought us the video, we sat at a Danny's watching this video over and over, making all kinds of comments. Of course, everybody in the restaurant.
And what are those guys doing?
We used to meet at that same restaurant a lot, and a lot of weird conversations went on there. But that's got to be it because we've got the thing on video.
This was at
And
Denny's?
when I was, that's where we were watching it.
Yeah.
Ishmael has a tendency to collect interesting videos and EMFs and things. It's almost like they are drawn to him like a magnet. You know, a lot of people get a lot of weird stories. He gets tons. And it's a good thing he's into paranormal. He's the founder of the LPRS.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think from the last show, he was the guy who was in the,
Yes, the
the
EVP,
Laredo
Paranormal
Paranormal
Research
Research
Society.
Society, right?
Yeah, and his name was heard in the back of the EVP that you caught. Somebody said Ishmael, but it was real compressed. But that video, the way it came about was hilarious. Jaime Maussan, y'all have heard of him?
Oh, yeah, I know Jaime. I know of Jaime Maussan.
Jaime Maussan came to Laredo to do a guest event. Ishmael got to interview him, sort of. He asked him two questions. It filled a 90-minute show. While Maussan is here in Laredo, everybody wants to talk to him and everybody wants to show him their evidence. And a guy kind of is trying to force his way through the door. And of course, everybody's like, are we going to have to beat this guy up or call the cops or what? Because, well, he convinces them that he should be allowed in.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes in and he talks to Mr. Maussan and he's got a VHS cassette
Wow.
with a UFO on it. Oh, this is a while ago. This is, I forget what year it was, 19 something. So he gives the video to Jaime Maussan. They don't have a VHS player at the store where the guest event is being held. It was a comic book store. Jaime Maussan says that he will watch the video and get it back to him as soon as he can. And the next morning, he gets on a plane and flies back to Mexico City. A few years go by, as in maybe 10, 15. Ishmael receives a package in the mail from Mexico City. It's a VHS tape from this guy. It doesn't have any writing on it. It's just a cassette. So now Ishmael is looking at it and he's like, I've seen this somewhere before, but I can't remember who brought it. So he's racking his brain trying to remember who in the heck sent me or handed me this videotape and how am I going to get a hold of the person? He finally found the name. I don't remember how he did it. It had a name and a phone number. He calls the number and the guy's like, who are you? You've got my what? One of those situations. He'd completely forgotten about the tape. During the conversation, this guy says, oh, by the way, I've got some better footage. One of them is an airplane disappearing. So Ishmael invites him over. We sat down at the Danny's table and watched this airplane vanish on video. And it's just one of those things that Ishmael just has a magnetic draw for things like that. He's the one that
What kind of plane was it?
Just a regular commercial airplane, two jet engines, like anything you'd see taken off from a small town airport. And
was it like a Delta? I mean, was it like a well-known?
Yeah, it
company?
was a well-known company, but in Mexico.
Okay, but in
Air
Mexico.
Mex.
Okay.
You couldn't see the tail number; it was a bit far, but you could see that it was a regular-looking commercial airline until it started disappearing.
Until it started to disappear and turn into something that looked like a flying saucer. Which I still think is a good term.
The folks in Jefferson loved it when I showed it.
And you think so? When you say it looked like a flying saucer, it actually changed shape, or it just was the way that everything else was blocked out, so what was left looked like a flying saucer.
Yes.
Okay,
So it
could have been like some government
cloaking technology or something.
Right? Does Mexico have cloaking technology?
Well, would we try it out here in, L.A. or New York? No, we'd go somewhere else.
I would say they'd try it out in Area 51 because
probably
they control, what is it, 90% of Arizona? The government owns 80 or 90% of Arizona. And they don't pay taxes on any of it.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, there's not a lot out there in much of Arizona.
Oh, it's gorgeous, though.
According to the Constitution of the United States, the government, which is of the people, for the people, by the people, the government is not allowed to own land. That's why they always lease military bases. When Fort McClellan closed, they just simply said, okay, Laredo, here you go. Here's your fort back. And Laredo turned it into LJC, the junior college, because the government isn't supposed to own land. However, the government does what the government wants.
The government does what it's going to want to do, right?
That's the whole reason for the Second Amendment, was to keep the government from doing things that they weren't supposed to. Getting off on a side trail.
That's okay.
That's a different podcast, but I like where your head's at.
When Josh Turner took his Paranormal Roundtable from one platform to another, it was a free-for-all. People were saying politically incorrect things that they wanted to say about certain people that are constantly in the news, and the gloves were off. It was either of y'all know, I mean, any of those five of us, have y'all ever met or listened to Daniel Allen Jones? He's a MUFON member. He's the MC at a lot of conferences and such. I thought he was just going to hang out. He had this look on his face like, what have I got myself
into here? I came here to talk about UFOs.
Well, it is pretty well known that Mexico has aligned itself with the Romulan Empire. So cloaking
it's the
technology.
Romulans.
Yeah, they're the
Okay.
ones that have the cloaking technology.
Yeah, but
So-
see, JJ, you're not supposed to let that out. Now they're going to be jacking with me.
They're gonna
You know,
wipe out all of this episode.
I'll find Stewie stuck, on a stick somewhere up in a tree. You know?
Okay, so I had to go back and look. I think that's the guy I was telling Vic about today because I was listening
You were. It is
to
the
our
guy you were talking
episode
about.
last year,
Yeah.
and you said that was the guy to talk to, because he had the knowledge on the UFO crash into the windmill.
In
Yes.
Aurora, Texas.
Aurora.
Texas. Yeah. Mhm.
Aurora, Texas. Yeah, that's Daniel Allen Jones. He hung out with Jim Mars a lot.
Oh, that would have been cool.
If Jim Mars was going to go to Aurora, yeah, I can't say
Aurora.
the thing.
Go to the
Aurora.
Arroyo in Aurora.
If he was going to go to Aurora, Texas, Daniel would tag along with him. So it's probably who you're thinking of.
Jim Mars was a lot of fun to listen to. He really was. Okay, I'm going to go and give us another topic here. Okay, we have a new 6. All right. You guys tell me what you think. Topic 1, spirit attachments. Coming home with a paranormal infection. Topic 2 is whales in the rainforest. How to get there. What do such things mean? Topic 3 is crying statues. Topic 4 is randonautica. Topic 5 is intravenous tetrahydrocannabinol. And all topics related therein. Topic 6 is dead Bigfoot removal detail on Mount St. Helens.
Dead Bigfoot removal detail
On Mount St. Helens.
Okay.
I like spirit attachment.
Take us along, man.
It is this is one going back to the entire Japanese belief system in the supernatural, which is extensive. One of the primary rules that most people will follow is to never walk near a graveyard unless you're going to explicitly visit family members and leave offerings and then return back. And even when that's done, you always place purified salt by each of the entranceways in order to keep away any potential entanglement that you have received. And I learned that lesson the hard way when I picked up an attachment and afterwards always had a healthy supply of purified salt and never walked near that graveyard ever again.
Well, since we definitely do have new listeners, you probably need to tell us the attachment story.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not trying to bore anyone, so I'm sure y'all have heard.
Believe me, you're not boring anybody.
Okay. So I was living in the heart of Japan and in a fully furnished apartment that even then it cost like $6,000 a month for 400 square foot. Yeah, it was crazy. Thank
Were
God
you paying for that, or was the company paying for that?
Company was paying for that.
Okay.
I couldn't have afforded that. Dear goodness gracious. Especially then when I was living in Japan. It's not like now where the dollar is so much stronger. Then the yen was so much stronger, and I was already losing 25% of my salary just right off the bat. However, that's neither here nor there. Where I was living at, there was a big graveyard right across the path. And in fact, my balcony, which was almost as large as my entire apartment, not only could you see Tokyo Tower right from my room, but if you looked down, then you would see the graveyard. Okay. And I used to walk by this thing all the time because it was right on the way to Don King, which is short for Don Quixote, which is like a mega chain store that sells.
They're awesome. My wife's favorite store.
They're phenomenal. I absolutely love Donkey. Everyone does. Well, I had been up working until like 5:30 in the morning and finally passed out in my bed. And I dreamed that there was an entity on the outside on my balcony banging to get in. And it was saying one word over and over again, which was hide, 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 hide. But it was being, I didn't hear it with my ears. It was being piped into the very center of my brain. And it caused physical pain. The next thing I know, I'm being woken up by an earthquake alarm, maybe 15 minutes later, after I had fallen asleep, because it was still but early in the morning. But that word kept echoing into my head. So I'm like, I've heard that word somewhere. And I run to my dictionary, look it up, and sure enough, it means to enter. This thing was demanding entry. Now, if it was just gobbledygook that it was speaking, that would be one thing. But to actually hear this thing screaming, let me in, let me in. And then the sensation,
in another language.
Yeah, and with a sensation that I have never had before. Everything just, yeah. And from that point on, I was always freaked out in that apartment. That is
Chris, have you ever had anything in the investigations you've done follow you home?
Not myself, but a few of our folks did. My wife always tells me don't bring anything home, and I've always been very careful. One of our investigators was on the second floor of an abandoned hospital, and just about everybody in Laredo had a kid born there if they're 15 years old or older. So he's like, well, I'm going to take this home because this is from the pediatrics ward where our son was born.
Oh,
and so he
really
picked
good
up
idea.
a small fragment of something and took it home. And he kept hearing banging noises in the house all night. They saw shadows moving about. Finally, he just said, I'm taking it back. So he took this small, I think it's a piece of broken glass from the nurse's station. And he took it back, went in, set it right where he found it, went home. The sounds all stopped. Ishmael is always very careful. We have a prayer before we go into a place, and he always has a prayer when we come back out. He tells everybody, if you want to participate, great. If you don't, you're on your own. Uh, everybody,
Right.
everybody gathers around because you do what the experts tell you to do if you're smart. But no, I've
Do
always
y'all
been,
do the Saint Michael prayer, or what? Is it a
just
specific
depends.
prayer? You know?
No, just please watch over us. Make sure we don't do anything stupid.
Okay.
Keep the bad things on that side and the good things on this side. Now, I did have a something. I can't exactly describe what it would be. Me and Ishmael had gone to the. Yeah, you'll notice we go around a lot together. He was in law enforcement. I was in law enforcement. We worked together a lot, so we knew each other before we had gotten into the LPRS together. We went to the Shiloh Cemetery, which they removed all the headstones and built houses on top of the graves. They
Okay.
didn't bother to
They didn't watch
remove,
Poltergeist.
No, they didn't remove the residents first.
Yeah.
So I whipped out my cell phone, had the voice recorder, and I just said, "Does anybody here like to say anything?" Push record, they held it up, stood there for 30 seconds, push end, and we went on about our business looking at the site. I got home. I'm walking into the house, and the home phone rings. I've actually got a landline. The home phone rings. I look at it, and it says that I am calling from my cell phone, which is in my pocket. So I pick up the handset and I listen. And you know how you can tell when there's somebody there,
Oh,
even
yeah.
if they're not talking?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I heard. And it was
Wow.
just this hollow sound, and then it hung up. And I told my wife about it when she got home. She's like, "Oh, you better not bring anything." That's about the closest to anything following me home. But somebody once asked, "How come an EMF is not like a Ouija board?" Uh, Pretty simple explanation. When you sit down at a Ouija board, you are opening yourself and your surrounding areas up to whatever's over there. When you're using an EMF detector, you're just saying, "Hey, you want to say something? Say it." But you're not
Right.
giving them permission to.
Well, and your hand is what's moving the planchette. So you actually are basically giving permission to control your hands,
Maybe you're the
which
one I
is,
heard that from.
it may be. And I heard it from years ago from Adam Bly. And it, yeah, you're giving rights to part of your
Physical.
body.
Yeah.
Whereas with a recorder, even with dowsing rods, the dowsing rods are free floating, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have, you're saying move the rods, not my
Mhm.
hands to
Yes.
make them move.
But that's the closest to anything ever following me to the house. And it was like, why is my cell phone calling my house phone?
JJ, how would a guy like me who just loves graveyards? I mean, I will occasionally just for fun go to a graveyard, walk around, look at the graves, try to figure out what the lives were of the people, figure out when medical care changed because there were fewer graves of kids. Maybe I've done a few things at least once that weren't entirely advisable.
I don't believe it, Vic. You were an angel. But keep going.
No, well, no, I didn't do. I mean, nothing bad. I mean, I was thinking, I was trying to get an EVP. I was trying to figure out how can I get an EVP, and I thought I don't really want to go out there and say, "Okay, anybody's got something to say, come and talk to me here." So I'm rationalizing what's a way that I can do this without breaking the rules. And so I had my nice little Olympus recorder, with the fur sock and all this. And so I'd put it on a grave and I'd stand back a few feet and I would say the Lord's Prayer. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm just simply offering a prayer for whomever happens to be here. Didn't get any bad EVPs. I got one really, really weird EVP. A very, very weird EVP. But if in the Japanese world, if you were to go to graveyards like that, would that just be a horrible thing to do?
Not horrible, just ill-advised.
Ill-advised, okay.
And trust me, I'm a person who
monumentally ill-conceived.
Yeah, I mean, I have spent my life in graveyards.
Mm-hmm.
I planted my own headstone with my family when I was 6. My grandmother would drag me out almost every other weekend to some graveyard in order to maintain it because the little churches were too cheap to pay someone to do it. And we have family scattered all over the place. And my grandmother wanted to make sure that they were very well taken care of. So I've spent more times in graveyards than I can possibly dare to count. But there is something different between graveyards here and graveyards there. Like, there are modern graveyards I have no problems with, but the ones that are much older, I steer away from.
Okay.
Same thing for graveyards here.
Mm.
If you were to enter like an old Civil War era or older, cemetery,
No,
would that bother you?
No, it wouldn't bother me at all.
Or like a family plot, like a 2015 headstone plot wouldn't
No,
bother you?
that wouldn't bother me. Here, I just make sure to follow proper etiquette and don't step on graves and show proper amount of respect and all that stuff. And I have no worries. But
So what do you think it is that's different about the ones there?
I think it's the age, and there's something, I don't know if it's just the amount of time or if things are truly different. But if you run into a spirit or a ghost in the US, unless you're dealing with the infernal, you're gonna walk out pretty okay. In Japan, almost if you run into a spirit, you might as well kiss your ass goodbye, or you're going to be in for a really, really bad time. And I can't explain that discrepancy. I don't know what it is.
Let me try to encapsulate that. In most of the U.S., I mean, for instance, every time I go to Kentucky, I'll go out to my brother-in-law's family's old plot, which goes back to the late 1790s. Okay, people in his family have lived in that part of Kentucky for hundreds of years. And some of these graves have started to deteriorate, or they're very deteriorated. They've fallen off the base. You can barely read what's on them.
Yep.
So I'll spend a day or two going out and find a grave, clean it up, make it where you can read it, reset it in concrete if I need to. Okay, so this is making this grave viable for the next 100 years or so. Okay, to me that seems like a proper service to do for this family that I respect.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you're saying that the people who, if you run into a spirit in a U.S. graveyard, it's likely to not be something dangerous or malignant.
Right.
But if you run into a spirit in a Japanese graveyard, it's likely to be something malignant. And then
it could be. I mean, you have a greater chance of it being
a greater chance.
Not.
And my mind immediately wants to know, okay, why? What's the difference in the spirit you're running into?
Well, I mean, you're talking about a culture which has, and I have nothing but pure respect for Japan.
Oh, so, I know. I mean, and this is not in any way being negative.
Oh, I know it's not. I just wanted to clarify for myself, because the last thing I want to do is piss anybody off. But this is a culture which has the single most expensive piece of real estate in the world that is occupied by a single shrine, which is meant to appease the spirit of a samurai warrior that supposedly was decapitated and the head flew all the way back from Edo to Tokyo or something. It's something bizarre. It's a strange story, but
not flying like on an airplane, just flying through supernatural means as a head.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a good story.
In the 1940s, the Japanese government wanted to remove that shrine and actually enlisted the help of the U.S. government to do so. And after quite a few people died, numerous accidents, I think at least 2 bulldozers fell on their sides.
Wow.
They canceled it. They're like, nope,
nope, not worth it.
We want to make sure that we keep his spirit appeased. And to this day, that's what you find.
Well, I can honestly say, as far as I know, I've never had a spirit attachment. I know Dave has.
Yep. We've had several.
Yeah.
We've had several. I mean, I always say if you investigate long enough, eventually something's going to follow you home. And sometimes you're tired and you forget to do all your protective measures when an investigation is over, and the next thing you know, there's a what a balloon from a party just winds up floating around the house in random rooms, and the dog's all freaked out, and it's like, oh man, something followed us home again.
We all float down here, George.
We all float down here.
And I had one that was pretty dark, pretty negative, that lasted about 4 days or 5 days, but nothing significant, nothing I couldn't get rid of, nothing that was a real problem.
Well, I always start to flesh out what the spirit might be. I mean, I can see something just being lonesome. Okay, metaphorically being lonesome and saying, "Oh, they seem nice. I'm just going to go hang around in the corner, and I won't feel so lonesome for a while." Okay, I mean, that's relatively benevolent. Or I can see there being a spirit that's angry, vengeful, and says, "Look, I can't get revenge on the people I really want to get revenge on, so he'll do."
Just lash out at whoever. Yeah, we've always looked at it as a curiosity thing. You go into these places and you ask a bunch of questions and you pay attention to anything that responds, and you're respectful and you're interested in them. And so why not follow you home? One of the biggest ways to get rid of them is just to not pay attention to them at all.
Got you. They just say, that was a bad
move.
move.
Start hearing noises, stuff moves, whatever in the house. You just, okay. And you just ignore it. And after about 3 days, it stops.
Okay.
It's like, okay, well, I thought this was going to be interesting. Not so much. Guess I'll just go back home.
All right. Do you know of stories where people have had a spirit attachment that chose just to stay there permanently? I ain't leaving. You're my guy.
I can't
Not
think
from
of
anybody I know.
Can't
I
think
can't
of
think of
any.
any people, but that thing of the little girl that runs around Laredo. Why?
Oh, I wanted to see, are there any updates on that? Anything new?
Last thing I heard was a woman living over. It's a new subdivision on the north side of town called Alexander. It's not that new, but my house was built in '75, so that thing is new. And she came in the front door of her house, her and her kids, and they said there was a little girl, white dress, brown hair, standing at the end of the hallway looking at her. And of course, the
And
kids are all like,
the button-up shoes?
she didn't notice the shoes. She was just like, why is this kid in my house? Her kids were all like, because they were little kids. And then the girl was gone, and she was like, okay, that's weird.
But interestingly, though, I mean, she looked at this little girl and thought, little girl.
Yeah.
She wasn't thinking ghost of little girl.
Solid.
Solid. Yeah. Just the
Until
same kind of visual appearance as I see with you right now, or anybody else. I mean, just a solid human body.
Hello again. You are now having your life enhanced by Avalon Lee and Dankworth Smythe's second educational moment. In 1943, I had a conversation with Mr. G.M.M. Tyrrell, a well-known British master of the psychical sciences. I asked Mr. Tyrrell to describe the perfect ghost. That is not too easy, he replied. But there are certain fundamentals which are comparatively easy to describe. Visibly and audibly, such an apparition would be indistinguishable from the real human being. But there would be one or more marked differences. For example, there would probably be a feeling of cold near the apparition. If one tried to touch it, one's hand would go right through without encountering resistance of any kind. If powder was sprinkled on the ground where it walked, no footmarks would be left. Additionally, it is almost certain that the apparition would produce no effect whatsoever on a movie camera or a sound recording apparatus.
Which is pretty dang fascinating.
It is interesting to hear that it's still happening.
Everybody that sees her says she looked alive, she looked real, she looked solid, and then she disappears. And it's been going on for as long as I can find people to talk about. And like I said, people are still seeing. There's a fast food restaurant towards the north side of town where they've encountered her several times there. Usually, what they'll see is handprints on everything, and they're
Right.
small hands. Or they'll come in early in the morning, unlock the door, swing the door open, and they see her disappearing out the back of the building.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
So she doesn't want to stick around.
but she's everywhere.
That's
There was a theater. She would run up and down the aisles when the movies were showing, and the staff were so used to people complaining, they would just say, "Oh, yeah, we'll be there in a minute," and then not even bother to look because they knew they wouldn't find her.
But isn't that kind of and look, I'm not an expert on this. Isn't that kind of unusual behavior? I mean,
for a ghost
to cover that large a geographic area?
The entire city.
Yeah, I mean, this is my playground.
As far as I know, she might even go beyond. That's why I sometimes wonder, is it really a ghost or is it something else?
Okay, speculate.
It doesn't have to necessarily be something bad.
Right.
But what the heck are we dealing with?
Well,
whenever I hear Annabelle Lee talking, that's the first thing pops into my head is the little girl.
Well, I could send her out to see if she could meet her.
I was tempted to.
We will have a tea party. Little girls like tea parties, or they used to like tea parties. Especially if she's got button-up shoes, she likes tea parties. That's
it does. It brings up the question, though. Is it a ghost? Is it a spirit? Is it an alien? Is it something from another dimension? What the heck are we dealing with?
That's a very, very good question.
The experts. I just love the experts.
Right, huh?
The experts.
The experts.
Yes. They know because they know. Read a book once, but we don't know what a ghost really is.
Nope.
We are mostly assuming that it's the spirit of somebody that died. Mm-hmm. Or could it be an entity that I'm going to take on the physical attributes of this person, because then people will pay attention to me. Kind of like a particular demon that hung out in the kid's Ouija board because he was trying to get a hold of his dead aunt. And the next thing you know, head's spinning around and he's spewing out split pea soup. But that would be a whole lifetime of research right there, just trying to figure out what the heck a ghost is. All these people that have been studying them for hundreds of years now, and we still don't know. Something unknown. That's why it's called.
I don't think it's something that we ever will know.
No.
I don't think there's a definitive answer. I mean, there's definitely cases that appear to be a human spirit. I know in investigations we've done, we've interacted with things that do not seem demonic, don't have any sort of mal or negative intent. There's no real reason for them to fool us in any way. In fact, half the encounters are very short, they're brief, they're benign, and don't seem to have any purpose at all. There seem to be demonic things, and there's definitely demonic mimicry.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows what other the options are? I mean, I like your idea, dimensional. So, you think Bigfoot, well, maybe Bigfoot's, stepping through this little portal to another dimension, and that's why it disappears in the middle of a cornfield with snow, and the steps end right there. Well, maybe the little girl is like, I'm gone.
I can't think of who it was. I've heard his initials, RPG. I have no idea who he is. He was talking on a show about Bigfoot, and he came up with this theory that I really liked, and so I've repeated it. I always try to give him credit for it, but I don't always remember. There is a big, hairy ape that lives in the woods, runs around hugging the trees, eats granola bars, presses
And-
flowers,
And beef jerky.
frolics in the woods with the animals.
Mhm.
Then there's something that knows about Bigfoot, but is not Bigfoot. It takes on the appearance of this creature for its own purposes. We don't know what those purposes are because we've never been able to talk to it. It seems, and this is according to this guy's beliefs, it seems that this thing feeds on fear. It scares the heck out of somebody, chases them through the woods, and yet how somehow this person escapes. How do you outrun a 8-foot tall creature?
You don't.
But somehow they do. They get in their car. The thing is right there. It's chasing them. They fire up their car. They drive away. What's the first thing they do when they get home? They tell everybody else so they can all get scared too. And this creature just sucking it all in, going, "Oh, that was tasty."
So
What's my
even
next
after
victim?
the fact, even when it's not in their presence, it's feeding on that fear.
That's
That's an
the-
interesting-
Well, I mean, think about it. The thing doesn't have to, if it can imitate other things,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to imitate the heart and the liver and the stomach and the testicles and the muscle. All it has to do is imitate the external
The
appearance.
sight.
Yeah. All it has to do is say, let me just create the most minimal of matter just so I can be seen. That's all it takes. To get,
And does it even have to do that?
well, I guess you're right. I mean, it could just
Just be a psychic imprint.
just be a
right?
psychic imprint. It could be, but in order to make somebody, a human, believe that something is real, all you have to do is
Look and sound like it.
give that human enough sensory input. I mean, your brain will create most
Yes.
of what it needs to see. You don't necessarily even have to have a perfect representation of that.
The Gnostics in the, what was that document called, the Nag Hammadi, I think it's called. They dug it up somewhere.
Yeah, Nakamati. Hmm.
Josh Turner's real familiar with it. I think he read the thing. They were telling about how in their belief system there is an invisible entity that comes from another planet that preys on people's emotions.
Well, that's
And,
what isn't that what it is all about?
the clown.
Yeah, he's a glamour, and my understanding is that really what he wants is the fear.
Are you suggesting that it was a Gnostic text?
It seemed pretty
Doesn't make you
Gnostic to
wonder.
me.
Why is it spelled with a G? It's one of those things.
Gnostic.
Just for fun.
Well,
It's like pneumatic.
I mean, we've got an expert on all things ancient here. So why is it spelled with a G, Josh? JJ, why is it spelled with a G?
That would be the root. It'd be a Greek root, and
Gnosis.
G, yeah,
Mhm.
knowledge.
Right.
So
Can I read something? And if this is boring, we'll cut it out. But any of you guys know who Rudolf Steiner is or was?
Sounds familiar.
Rudolf Steiner was a Swiss, polymath. Okay, I mean, one of these guys. He was
He wore a white lab coat.
No, he was an ordained minister, and he was a mathematician, and he was a guy he built this astounding building in Switzerland called the Goetheanum, all about Goethe, and he involved himself with all things unusual, paranormal, and ghostly, spookarific. He would have been a very good spookarific guest, but he has a whole definition of what a ghost is. Rudolf Steiner's definition of a ghost is that it is something from the past that no longer exists but still influences our experiences. Steiner believed that humans once had a dreamlike consciousness that allowed them to participate more fully in the world's spiritual processes. However, he believed that humans have become restricted by their attachment to material things. Steiner believed that to regain the ability to perceive spiritual things, humans must train their consciousness to rise above their focus on matter. So he's talking about ghosts being this consciousness that more closely associates with the spiritual.
Kind of like our soul.
Kind of like our soul. And so, anyway, at least that's a definition. I haven't seen too many definitions of ghosts.
The only one that I believe to be true is that a ghost or a spirit was once human.
Once
in
human.
some way,
Okay.
shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, it either belongs to the divine or to the infernal.
Well, it's almost like he's talking about ghosts existing prior to being human. So, you know, you're a spiritual thing floating around out there. You become human. In becoming human, you become less attached or more attached to BMWs and huge color TVs and sex and all this sort of thing. So in order to become able to deal with the spiritual world again, you become a ghost in order to relearn what you once knew before you were physically human.
That kind of falls in with why the Hindus cremate their bodies. It's to make your body no longer attached to this world,
Right.
so your soul will move on to the next.
Your body at that point is simply a distraction.
That's why you don't find a whole lot of ancient Indian burial grounds with houses built on them. Not feather.
So,
I had to add that.
well,
My nephew is 50% Ho Chunk Indian. He's the one that told me that. So anytime he says Indian, he will say feather or
feather,
dot.
not dot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what my wife says. The first time I heard it from her, I'm like, well, I guess that makes sense.
I have a lot of listeners in India, and I keep saying, I hope I'm not upsetting y'all, but
Hope I'm not
it's
offending
the only
anybody
way.
there.
It's the only way we can differentiate who we're talking about.
You got to differentiate somehow.
Well, once you're dealing with a ghost, you've got your EMF detector, you've got your SLS camera going, you've got something in the room that seems to be interacting with you. Now the fun part, is this a ghost or is this something else?
Well,
And it's almost impossible to tell.
almost impossible to tell. Well, they're existing in a realm where they know the rules, and you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have any.
And I'm not even sure they know the rules. So we talked about this a little bit. I think that a ghost, if it's a ghost of a human, I think it's one of the reasons we capture so little is because I think they're existing and trying to make some sort of interaction as they exist, but they don't. It's not like they've been given the rule book and taken how to be a ghost 101, you know, and maybe if they got to the 201 class, then they can make things move. I mean, I think it's like this existence where, you know, they're just able to do a little bit, and maybe they're trying really hard. Now, the demonic, I think, has the rule book.
Okay.
I think that is a completely different ball game. They know the rules and work them well.
Dave, are you trying to suggest that Beetlejuice?
I was just about to say.
With this handbook for the recently deceased.
Well, yeah, what was it? The handbook for the recently deceased.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. You beat me to it, JJ.
Has anybody seen that movie yet? I want to know if it's worth seeing.
We're talking about the new Beetlejuice.
I haven't seen it yet. I have the same question.
I
Boy,
heard that it
I'll
was really
tell you.
good, but I haven't seen it myself yet.
Man, a movie's got to
Hollywood
be really catch my attention for me to go to a theater anymore.
They really have it's almost like they are driven to destroy any and all decent stories that were out there.
Any and all great things that existed in the past must be, what's the word? Desecrated.
Yes.
All in the hopes of avoiding coming up with new IPs and cashing
Snow-
in on nostalgia.
That's
Snow
why they
White
have
and
a
the
new
Seven
Wolfman
Dwarves,
coming
and none
out.
of them are even short. One was a woman. I think one was a black guy. One was a Hispanic dude.
He was
It's like-
7'1".
You know, I will say this. I have noticed that even in going back to graveyards here that I used to be completely comfortable in, if I do anything outside of the norm, I get extremely nervous. Like, for example, when I went back home to Tennessee most recently, and I wanted to take some video of the graveyard where my headstone is, where my grandmother and great aunt and great uncle and the whole bunch of other family members are buried. And I started to take a video, and I felt like I wasn't supposed to be doing this, like I was doing something wrong. And that's why when I saw a black thing come streaking toward me, I almost shouted like a little girl and dropped my phone. And it wasn't
Were your pants
until-
dry?
No, they were, thank goodness. and thank goodness again, because there was two little puppies that had come up to greet me that I had no idea that they were even there. But yeah, that level of nervousness, it has saturated into my bone for some reason. And I'm a little saddened by that because I used to not have that. And now I do.
When do you think that started, JJ?
After Japan.
After the Haidu incident.
Yep.
Or
You
Haida,
brought it-
whatever the word was.
You
yeah.
brought it back
I
with
do.
you.
Well, you know, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. This really angered me. So there is a podcaster who's living in Japan, and they asked me to come on their show, and I did. And I really liked one of them, but then she had another person with her that was supposed to be this psychic medium. And we're sitting there talking, we're having a good time. And then the psychic medium holds up a hand and seems like she's arguing with something. And then she looks at me and she goes, "You have a spirit right next to you that's Japanese and very angry." And I was polite. I played along, but I wanted to hold up my multiple Amodi protection from evil amulets and go, "No, that's not possible, you stupid person." You know, it just pissed me off to no end.
But there was not internally a feeling
No,
that
none.
she was being a fool.
She was full of shit.
Yeah, she's a
That's
big
what she
fool.
was.
She was seizing the moment to try to make herself look good by doing something. Oh, look, I've got this ability to reach from Japan all the way to the United States and pick up on this spirit next to this guy. That's all
This
she
Japanese spirit.
does.
Oh, and then of course she was just exhausted after that, and I went, "Yeah, right."
Yeah. Well, I did have that happen to me, though. I had a guest tell me that my father was standing right next to her. And I had a very different reaction. I had a reaction that, yeah, I think she's seeing something. I'm not sure it's my dad, but it's something that at least has been in contact with my dad, that knows my dad, that knows how to imitate my dad. And I did leave that particular podcast, boy, not just exhausted, but sweating and nauseated. That was rough.
Yeah, that really affected you. I remember it.
Yeah, it was a very, very rough the hardest podcast I've done. But I got through it. Tough, strong like a bull.
There's psychics and mediums out there that see stuff. There's no question.
Oh yeah,
I've worked with some of them.
I've had a conversation with a person who, was in the Discord server, and they were saying stuff about me that no one ever knew. And I walked out of there it was a great conversation, but I was exhausted. And if you were giving credence to what that other person is saying, I can imagine how exhausted he would have been.
Well,
I've worked with a few people that were psychics, and they proved it even though they didn't want to, kind of thing. A friend of mine, a long time ago, he'd been the chief of police in this small town for a while. And one day, just doing his thing, he found, I think it was a ring laying on the ground, and he had to actually dig the thing out of the dirt. No idea who it belonged to. Just, oh, well, this is a fancy ring. He put it in his pocket because it was a fancy ring. Months later, he saw a person across the room. He looked at the person and he said, "This is your ring." And he took it out of his pocket and handed it to him. And she almost fell on the floor. It was actually her grandmother's wedding ring that she had lost sometime. Had no idea when she lost it, where she lost it, how she lost it. He had no idea why he found it in the first place or how he knew that it belonged to this woman. He did.
who's got
And
the parrot?
That's actually my cat.
Oh,
One of my
okay.
cats.
Uh-huh.
She does that for no apparent reason.
It sounded like speech for a second.
That's what I
there.
thought, too.
It sounded like a TV in the background.
Yes, it does. And she will do that for like 6 hours straight sometimes for no reason.
Channeling. Okay, so anyway, this ring is returned to the original owner.
This guy was one of those people that he hardly ever talked. Jim.
Yeah.
He would just sit there and he would listen, he'd look around the room. If you asked him a question, he'd answer it, but he'd just sit there.
He just wasn't a talker.
And all of a sudden he would start to speak and the room would go silent because everybody wanted to hear what he had to say.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He was that guy.
I know
I'm
those
glad
guys.
I knew him. I'm glad I met the guy. I can say I was a good friend days, but that was years ago. But he was genuinely psychic. He just didn't tell anyone.
Which I
He
think
used
probably is the common case. I mean,
He used it for good. He used it for his, not for his benefit, for other people's benefit. But if you didn't actually see him doing things like that, you'd never know he could do it. These people that run around and they wave a flag or they're blowing a horn, "Hey, I'm a psychic." It's like, no, you aren't.
No, you're a marketer. That's the nicest thing you can say. I think Clarissa really was psychic. I really do. And it's like, just like JJ, you know, you're talking to this person and you can, at the end of the conversation, there's a feeling of uncomfortable veracity. That's a pretty good term, you know, uncomfortable veracity.
I like it.
You should write down your sayings like that. You'll make a list of.
Yeah, uncomfortable veracity. But can I switch here for a second? Anybody mind?
No.
Okay, I wanted to use another topic on the list, which is the Bigfoot body disposal gang and helping them on Mount St. Helens. Okay, so the story was, and I've heard this story from at least 8 different National Guard members. Okay, and you know, your standard National Guard guy that's called up for things like this, he's 21. Okay, he's a PFC. He may at some point be wanting to go active duty, but right now he's in the Guard and he's going where he's told to go when he's there for his time. And they are not indicating any kind of lack of intelligence or anything, but they're not terribly sophisticated people generally. And the story is that Mount St. Helens erupts, and of course it's chaos, you know, all over that part of the world. And they are told to get in some Jeeps, don't ask questions, you know, get in that Jeep, until we send somebody to drive the Jeep somewhere. Otherwise, just wait. Chris knows that you spend a lot of time waiting. What are you doing? I'm waiting. Yeah, you spend a lot of time waiting. And when finally the waiting period is over, they drive up into the mountains or into the remaining mountain, and they go to these caves. And in these caves are Bigfoot families, all of whom have been injured to some degree. Some of them are injured so grievously that the lieutenant or the major in charge just decides to dispatch them right there. But some of them aren't quite that badly injured, and they are taken somewhere to receive medical care. I don't know where you take a badly burned Bigfoot to receive medical care, but apparently there was some place they could take these Bigfoot. Now, I don't even really want to talk about the story because either it's true or it's not true. I know it possibly could be true. What I want to talk about is how over the years of listening to Art Bell and I even went back and found some of the, what was that guy's name? Chris Long John Silver something. He was an Art Bell sort of guy before Art Bell. And some of his stuff is out there on the internet and you could find it. He's not as good as Art Bell, but he was fun. What's that? There will
never be another Art Bell.
No, never be another Art Bell. But over time, you develop the ability to listen to these stories and get a real good idea of whether or not they're laying out BS or not. Okay, so one of the more famous Art Bell stories was the guy whose plane, it either drifted into Area 51 or he decided that it was his job He flew in. He flew in, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. It was his job to fly into Area 51. And it was very dramatic. And he was saying, "Oh, I don't think I'm going to survive this. I see fighter jets over there." And he's really laying on the tears and all the things you would expect from that. And then he goes blank. And Art Bell is saying, I wonder what happened there. I remember listening to that live the first time it was broadcast.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like 2, 3 in the morning or something. I'm listening to this. And man, every sensor I had went BS, bull, garbage. This guy, you could just hear it in his voice. Yeah, he's trying to act. Oh, and he even called Art Bell later on and said that he was that guy. And Art says, "Okay, convince me." And he pretty much does it just exactly like that. But I could tell right at that time when he was giving the talk from his little plane in Area 51 that everything he said was a lie. Now, when I listen to these now 28, 30-year-old National Guard guys talk about going up there and helping Bigfoot, and having some of them dispatched and having to put them in big nets and fly them out of there, I don't get any of that feeling. I get the feeling like these are young guys who experienced something they never expected to experience. And they're telling their story. They're just telling a straight up story. Totally different emotional response on my part. Now, am I arrogant in saying that I'm, an internet story lie detector? Yeah, that's an arrogant thing to say. But I bet you guys can do it too.
Yeah, but you've got an extra fine-tuned sense when it comes to, people's emotions, what they're saying, how they're saying it from your childhood. So, I mean, we know that I believe you are able to see when someone's lying a lot easier than others.
Okay, maybe.
But the interesting thing about this to me is it sort of lines up with this mix of stories that we keep sort of running across. You look at the guy that was interviewed on Tracy Bush's podcast, the guy who worked for the government, that kept track of had the app to keep track of the Bigfoots, the dogmen, the werewolves.
He had
and all that stuff.
the cryptid database.
Right. And so the interesting thing is the government knew where they were.
Mm-hmm.
So that would line up potentially with that.
Yeah, that's true.
They also treated them like a resource, not like a group of another group of beings that are at the same level as we are, right? You don't just put down somebody who's
Correct, right.
got
right.
more burns than the others,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like a horse. You're treating that Bigfoot like it's not a sentient being. You're treating it like it's another animal out there. That's an interesting detail on that story.
That is. I hadn't thought about that like that.
But that's the way they're treating these dogmen and Bigfoots, right? They're like tools for the military to go and do certain things that we want them to do, and the rest of the time we keep track of them. And
if they get out of
I don't
line,
know, it may all be BS. I have no idea.
Well, yeah, but the other thing this guy would say, look, most of them are good Bigfoot, good Bigfoot, good boy.
Right.
But if one gets out of line, there's a bullet waiting for them.
Have you ever heard of anything like that, Chris?
Yes. There was, I'm trying to remember which podcast I was listening to. Someone was telling about they had contact with a military unit. This guy was in the military. It was a military unit that their job was, if a Bigfoot was causing problems anywhere in the U.S., they're supposed to track it down and take care of it.
Eliminate it.
Yes. And it was like Delta Force, Green Beret, some super wild specialized group.
Yeah, I wonder what that MOS is.
No idea. Something bizarre, probably.
But there are strange MOSs.
Zulu 117.
Yeah.
But there were. Well, we did have the in-flight missile repairman. I forget what his designation was, but this guy was telling about his. He was not a member of the group. He just knew several people that were, and he was running off at the mouth a bit about it. But it was like you said, you listen to the story, and he was saying all the right things.
Right. He didn't
I've listened to too many people that said they were in the military. They knew all about the ejector seats built into the M1 tanks, or the you name it. As soon as they mention something like that, you're thinking, okay, this guy's an idiot. But
they don't have ejector seats in the M1 tank. It seems like a critical thing if you got to get out before.
They're just too expensive, man.
You barely have a seat. The seat in the M60 was wire mesh. It was just this. It held you in place. That's all it did. It didn't even have seat belts. Well, we didn't go that fast. I think the max speed was only about 25 miles. Now the M1 will do 90. But
I bet you that's a feeling.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So, but anyway, you've heard these stories of these people who are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seemed to me like the story that the other thing about hearing 8 different National Guard guys talk about it is they're in different units, and they all tell exactly the same story.
Yes.
And there's a point when an officer comes out and says, look, I could go and get the, we'll really screw your life over non-disclosure statement. And we will, but do we really need it? I mean, look.
Who's going to believe you?
Who's going to believe you? And do any of you really see anything wrong in this? Okay. These guys are up here, or these creatures are up here minding their own business, living their lives. Do you really not want to help them if you can? And, almost all these young guys are totally decent fellows. And so, of course, we want to help them if we can. So anyway, I found that story to be exceedingly believable.
It's definitely an interesting one.
I wonder if the room that they kept him in to convalesce, did it have TVs?
Some big ass beds. major
All
bed
ceilings.
bands. But you would treat a Bigfoot type creature the same way as you treat any other burn victim. And I'll tell you a story.
You'd have to shave them before you did anything else.
You'd have to shave them, but I'll tell you something. As a nurse, if you can work taking care of bad burn patients for more than a year, you're a tough person. You are a guy who's really got some cojones, or a girl who's really got some cojones, because that's a really hard patient to take care of.
Yeah. Don't want nothing to do with it.
So,
Well, what do you think, Vic? Pull another one? We got Chris. You got time to?
If Chris is up for another one,
no, I guess so. I have no idea what time it is.
It's
I don't have to go.
It's 10:32 your time.
Well, I don't have to go to work in the morning, but I do have to get my wife out the door. But now let's go for it.
Okay, let's do another one. All righty. Let's come over here. Let's just hit that. I'm cheating. I'm trying to find a really good one.
You don't have to tell him that, Vic.
I know. That's all the good thing about editing.
Just say the F9 key is working really slow.
F9 key is working really slow. Okay, this is a good one. Granger Taylor, flying saucer maker, and his disappearance, which is a pretty fascinating story. Perpetual motion, the Bronze Bull, the Zodiac Killer, Mandela Effect and false memories, and horned entities such as Pan or Baphomet.
I really like the Mandela.
Chris, I can't think of anyone on the face of the earth that I would be happy about talking about the Mandela Effect, other than you. Because
okay, I'm waiting to hear the explanation of this.
Oh, have you listened to the Mandela Effect? Mandela Effect people, and things like Paranormal Caught on Camera and things like this. Man, these are some odd people.
My brother and I were at home. I don't know why, because it was school day. We're sitting there watching TV because Kennedy is in Dallas. And because our mother was really into Kennedy, especially into Jackie Kennedy, she even wore the white gloves, which I could never understand. So we're sitting there watching Kennedy drive down through Dallas. And all of a sudden, a whole bunch of things happened. I would have been 5 at the time.
This would have been like November 21st, or?
Yes.
So like the day before the assassination.
The day of the assassination.
Okay.
He was driving through Dallas the day before he was in Houston.
Okay, sorry.
So we watch him. All of a sudden, there's all kinds of confusing things going on. We don't know what's happening. Our mother comes into the room. She looks at the TV and starts crying. So we right away thought, uh-oh, we're in trouble. Something we did. She tells us to go out in the yard and play, and we're okay. We're not in trouble because we're going outside. Otherwise, we'd be going to our room. We talked about this. Me and my brother talked about having seen this on TV since 1963. It came up a lot. There was no television broadcast of Kennedy being shot in Dallas in 1963. The Zapruder film wasn't released until 1973, 10 years later. Until 1973, nobody ever saw the video of him being shot. And yet me and my brother and about a dozen other people I knew all swear we watched it on TV.
I have heard other people say this before. I've heard this before.
It will drive you crazy if you think about it too much. If I was the only one that thought I saw it on TV, obviously I am confused. But to have a dozen other people all say, yes, we saw it on TV as well. My brother would swear that it was on TV.
Do you remember what you were seeing on TV?
Yes.
I mean, you were seeing the actual caravan.
We saw the limousine come around the corner. There's the president sitting on the passenger side.
Yeah, Conley
He's
next to him.
He's smiling. He's looking like the president. They're driving along. They turn right in front of the, I always call it suppository, the school book deposit.
The school book suppository, yeah.
Yes, that would hurt a lot. They turn, all of a sudden, it got confusing. People are running, people are screaming. The car is driving away real fast. We didn't know what was going on.
There'd probably be that feeling, that sound of confusion and chaos.
Mhm.
You know, these voices saying, you know, what happened? What happened? What happened? Yeah.
But we saw it, and we talked about it for years after that, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old.
And nobody
And
had a VCR at that time.
Now that thing hadn't been invented yet.
What's that?
It was a film in a case that
Wow.
you had to take out of the case. You had to run it through the solution to process it. Life magazine had bought the Zapruder film from Zapruder. They put it in a safe and locked the door, and they never even looked at it. I don't know what they were saving it for, but there were a few CIA agents working for Life at the time. Not that they had anything to do with it, of course, but to
Chris, when you saw this event on TV, whatever the event was,
Mhm.
was there anything that felt strange about the time, your home, the way other people were acting?
just the fact that we were both home from school, it's been a constant wonder. I don't think we were sick. I just know that we were both home on a school day. I think it was a Friday.
Did they have
And-
teacher work days back then?
No
Who
idea.
knows, right? Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
It, just like I said, it's in the back of my mind to keep saying, why was I home that day?
Right.
And my wife thinks that maybe because Kennedy was in town, it's like, hey, let's keep the kids home so they can watch it on TV.
Mhm.
Which there were no TV cameras anywhere near Dealey Plaza.
Hmm.
And then for anybody who doesn't know, the Mandela Effect, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is about Nelson Mandela and whether or not he died in prison.
Yes.
Many people
And
seem to have
I
memories.
remember him dying in prison,
Yes.
but he didn't. Apparently, he got out of prison, lived for many years after, right?
Became president of South Africa.
When I first heard that he was being released from prison, I thought, wait a minute, he's dead. This is an imposter.
And then
But
the
then he-
idea is there's some sort of split that happened
Yes.
dimensionally or something, where some people are from one dimension or split in time, where the events unrolled that way, and the other people, and the one we're in now is a
Yes.
completely different timeline than where we originated.
It's been going on for a long time, but they only named it the Mandela Effect after Nelson Mandela. But it became so popular. So many people were saying, wait a minute, but he's dead. I remember hearing on the news that, and I can't think of his name, which is horrible. Blazing Saddles,
Mel Brooks?
Mel Brooks. They announced on the news that Mel Brooks had died. He's still alive today.
I have
But I remember
Go ahead.
hearing it on the news. They're
I
talking
remember
about
something very. I've stepped on you a few times here, Chris, and I apologize. It's not aggressive, and it's not meant to be
it doesn't matter.
hurtful. I remember and I really do remember this, the news talking about, and this is a very strange person, Kenneth Branagh dying. And they were talking about, it's so sad that such a young, talented Shakespearean actor has left the earth. Kenneth Branagh is the guy who plays Gilderoy Lockhart on Harry Potter. He mostly makes, really, really highbrow kind of movies.
I never saw Harry Potter.
But what's that?
I never saw Harry Potter.
Oh, okay. He's a Shakespearean actor, considered very, very good. And I remember them talking about him dying. And I, just like you, I went through my life for a couple of years thinking, oh, Kenneth Branagh is dead. And then I looked in either the paper or at a theater or something and say, new movie starring Kenneth Branagh. Huh?
Hmm. Well, Chris, you said this has been happening for a long time. What's the oldest example you can think of with it?
I believe. I think they announced that Queen Elizabeth had died. They announced it on the news, not BBC, but the one in Australia. I think they call it ABC.
Yeah, I guess it's Australia, ABC.
They're upside down. They announced it on the news that she had died, and how they are about the Queen. Thousands of people started their mourning process, only to find out that she was still alive. And then they contacted the news company wanting to know why they had announced that she was dead. They kept saying, we never said such a thing. And yet they had thousands of people telling them that, yes, you did. Unfortunately, this is back, you couldn't record anything. And it's your word against ours kind of thing. There were other instances like that. I would have to go back and check my notes. I think I did a show on it.
So we're talking about something that potentially is an ongoing thing.
Yes.
Not that there was one event that split time, but that it is a continual folding in of other timelines into the timeline we're currently in.
The millionaire, the guy with the top hat on the Monopoly game. Mm-hmm. The one that, do not pass go, don't touch. Does he have a monocle or doesn't he?
Yes.
Well, I think the understanding is that he doesn't.
No monocle. And yet everybody swears they saw him with a monocle.
He absolutely has. Oh, man.
Fruit of the Loom. Fruit of the Loom underwear. Had that tag right in the middle of the back that always scratched no matter what you did. It had a cornucopia with the fruit spilling out of it, correct? They swear they never had it.
Yeah.
Ooh,
they swear they never had a cornucopia. See what I mean? It's ongoing. People remember things that supposedly haven't happened.
So theoretically, we would be talking about branches of timelines folding into a main timeline.
It'll make your head spin if you think about it too hard.
I mean, there's possible that it's crisscrossing timelines, but it seems more like a collapsing of, I don't know. Boy, that's interesting. I had thought of it as a one-time thing, or maybe it happened and all of the events that were remembered differently were folded in from the people in that timeline, but continued things.
Continues, and a lot of people, like I said, most people think that the millionaire has a monocle. There are hundreds of examples of this false memory.
Well, all right. So, what are your thoughts concerning this? I mean, you've got a better example than anybody else I know. Okay, since you were you were watching
the only
this
thing that makes sense. The only thing that makes sense to me, and you have to envision the multiverse. which according to scientists, that's the thing. You've got this universe, you've got another universe right next door, you've got another universe right next door. Lionel Fanthorpe, I hope you all know who he is.
I do.
Lionel Fanthorpe described time as not being linear. It's not this long straight line, but it's like a rolled up ball of twine. And every once in a while, you've got two lines of twine that run side by side. And when that happens, you've got is kind of two timelines are together. So you can see a group of Roman soldiers marching through England. Or you can see Marie Antoinette several years before she lost her head. What if universes are like that as well? You've got two universes where things are so similar, so almost exact, that our mind somehow connects up to a mind in another universe, another me, which that's scary to think about.
No, an infinite number of views.
In his universe, Kennedy was seen on TV being shot. And as a result, I somehow picked up on what this other person was seeing. That's the only thing that makes any sense. Otherwise, I'm completely crazy. And I hope that ain't true.
Well, I mean, it has another thing, too. I mean, that's another thought in that the instances of Chris James across the various universes, or apparently infinite universes, have some kind of connection.
What did Hannibal Lecter say to Clarice when he first meets her?
Well, he was talking about...
She first walks up and he says, "Hello, Clarice."
Hello, Clarice, yes.
No,
Hello?
never said it.
I don't go ahead, but anyway, that's...
He never said that.
Okay, a lot of movie stuff
said-
like that.
He said, "Good morning."
Okay.
Didn't use her name?
Nope. And yet everybody thinks he did.
Oh, I remember him saying her name very clearly.
Didn't happen.
I didn't remember if it was hello or whatever, but I
No.
remember the Clarice.
He said, "Good morning."
Huh.
Darth
Well,
Vader.
I mean, then of course there's no, Luke, I am your father, or something like that. There's
No,
a lot of movie
I-
lines that
No,
people get wrong.
I am your father.
Right.
So,
Luke Skywalker said that his father had died fighting the Empire. And Darth Vader says, "No, I am your father."
Well, the one of the ones they come up with a lot is the kids' book, The Berenstain Bears, or the Berenstain Bears.
Yep.
Bernstein. Stein.
Berenstain. Okay, so look, what is it supposed to, okay, look, guys, this is truly interesting. What is it supposed to be now? The Berenstain Bears?
That's what they go with, I guess.
Okay. So I've just got on newspaper.com and I'm searching between 1960 and 1970. And I typed in Berenstain Bears and they come right up as the Berenstain Bears. Now let's see if I also get entries for the Berenstain Bears. I get
think it was
entries for
spelling.
both.
I think it was the spelling. You know how like some people spell their last name one way? We had a guy at work, his name was Gonzalez with an S. And everybody would spell it with a Z, and they're like, "You're nuts." It's like, no, it's spelled with an S. It's one of those things. It's just how you spell it.
Right. So obviously, well, I did another one of these like this. There was a cousin of mine who was insisting that the Chick-fil-A logo had changed over the years. That, it had a little curly Q or something in it like that. And he said, no, that didn't exist. So I go back to the first year that Chick-fil-A existed in newspapers.com and find the little curly Q in that. But I mean, all of these are matters of the fact that we don't really pay attention very much. You
But
pick
why
up
do so many people have really huge memories, like Nelson Mandela dying, seeing Kennedy get shot on TV, the Queen of England dying.
Right. That's a
Things
little
like
more
that.
important than the title of a book.
Thousands of people that remember it happening to a point where, there are certain things when they happen, you know exactly where you are, what you're doing at the time.
Mhm.
Like when the planes hit 9/11, I know exactly where I was, what I was doing.
I do too.
Things like that. I can't say exactly where I was when Elvis died. But
I can.
I mean, this would be like that's a perfect example. This would be like you realizing all of a sudden that there was only one tower in the World Trade Center,
Mhm.
On 9/11, not two.
Right.
It's that kind of a thing.
Mhm.
It's a significant difference on a significant event.
You realize by saying that you probably just started a whole new internet conspiracy.
Yes. I keep telling Vic that we need to do, he needs to do a Trailer Trash Terrors episode on dimensional theory, because I feel like there's this, everybody assumes that the multiple dimensions are a definite thing, and I'm not sure that that's as settled in science as it's made out to be. And
It's
what
not
those
settled at all.
dimensions are, but it's assumed to be because all the movies that have been made, like string theory has other dimensions, but they're like tiny. They're not like replications of our dimension. It's not, it doesn't mean what, it's one of those, that word doesn't mean what you think it means
Yes.
things in the case of string theory.
You keep using this word. I do not believe it means what you think it means.
Right. And so I think that's part of it.
Well, look, this is a problem with science. And, my favorite book about string theory was a book that I think the title was, here's another one, Not Even Wrong. So string theory doesn't exist anywhere except in very high level math. And it's really convoluted math, where you've got, Michio Kaku level people working for 15 years to figure out some way to make the math work.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way that's the only place it exists. They can't use it to predict anything. They can't use it to describe the world better. All they have is the math. But because the math normally comes first, and normally if the math says that X is true, normally X ends up being true. But yeah, you're right. I need to do one.
Well, and the
find me a
idea
dimensional expert. And
I think we need to. There's a call out. Feedback at paranormalrundown.com.
A dimensional
you are
expert.
An expert. Multiple dimensions. The thing to me is the other theory that everybody always tosses around is every decision that you make creates a new dimension,
a new universe,
right?
Yeah,
and that seems like the most inefficient way.
Well, it just seems
to manage
absurd.
reality.
I mean, if we think about this, we're making decisions pretty much all the time. Okay, so for instance, is it a decision if I go 30 seconds without picking my nose? I haven't really chosen to pick my nose, but if I
Vic, I would appreciate it if you would keep deciding to not pick your nose. I'm just saying.
Well, every time I make that decision, I'm making a new universe.
You've made a new universe.
It's a wonderful life.
I decided to pick up my teacup right now.
Right.
That's
a decision.
If I didn't, did I just spawn a new universe? And it's just crazy.
Chris decided to take a picture of all the cats hanging or congregating around his screen. And man, they are. What's that?
I was going to say, all that said, I have the answer.
Yeah.
As to why the Mandela effect.
Okay, good.
And that is, it is just a problem with the code in the simulation. So.
Okay.
It may be left over from the last time they ran the simulation, and they played with some variables, and so the answers are different, and we're just remembering it differently.
Yeah, so something creepy. You just said that, and my screen glitched up.
Did it have green writing falling down all of a sudden like rain?
No,
like
but
you're in the
was,
Matrix?
It was perfectly timed, though.
Could we say the answer is 42 then?
42.
Yes.
All right. Does anybody have any profound thoughts they want to make sure get heard? If you go ahead.
Well, Chris, is everything how to contact you still? What is
It's still the same. Strange things at arcanessa.com.
All right. And check out the newest book.
I'm currently seeking more weird stories from anybody that has one. As long as it's true, I'll put it in print.
Any particular weird stories or just any weird
Bigfoot,
stories?
UFOs, strange encounters. As long as it is in the paranormal slant, I will take it. Don't need to hear about your grandfather who left the house without his pants on. That's not that strange. But
could be pretty strange.
not anymore. But it's the strange. It's the email address is strangethings@arcanassa.com. It's ARCANASA, which is Arturo Castro and a NASA.
Okay. NASA, like
that's
the
how
space
he came
agency.
up with it. Yes, that's how he came up with it. It was his radio show that I first got the podcast going on. So my email is linked to him.
We definitely recommend to check out the Strange Things podcast. It's a weekly. I absolutely love listening to it.
I do too. And
I love the fact that it covers such a broad swath of topics.
I'll make a confession. I sometimes will collect several. Okay. Almost every single Strange Things podcast is 1 hour. 1 hour, 4 minutes, 1 hour, 6 minutes, occasionally 58 minutes, but it's almost exactly an hour. And I keep thinking, well, one of these days I'm going to have a sick day. I'm not going to want to do anything except lie in bed, put my headphones on, and listen to Chris.
Hey, that's what I did today while I was working outside. I was catching up on some back episodes, and it's great. You did the one on children's spirits. That was really good.
Ghost children.
Ghost children. Yeah. I mean,
I listened to y'all talking about Elizabeth twice while I was in Jefferson, and I was that fascinated with it. I listened to it as I was going to Jefferson, and I listened to it again as I was coming out of Jefferson. I loved it.
That's pretty cool.
Elizabeth has a great voice, huh?
Yeah, I think Dave's kind of in love with Elizabeth's voice, but
until
don't tell my wife.
Until she starts speaking to you from the foot of the bed.
Yeah, not so much then.
Oh, that would be creepy.
I keep hoping that the real Elizabeth will email Vic one day. Well, see, but you got to give me character points on that because I haven't pretended like she has. No, you haven't.
Which I very easily could do.
No, you took that energy and focused it into fiction, which was great.
Fiction. All right. Well, I suppose that is the end of Season 2, Episode 7 of the Paranormal Rundown. I think this was a pretty darn good rundown. Chris, thank you so very, very, very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Chris, thanks for joining us again.
You're kind of like so the new name for Chris is the Great Southern Saint of Coffee?
A lot of people keep asking me if I own the company because I wear these shirts all the time. I also have the baseball hat. It's like, no, I just like their coffee a whole lot. I'm their spokesman.
Well, I got a letter from somebody here in Pennsylvania who coined that term, the Great Southern Saint of Coffee.
Great Southern Saint of Coffee. That's a great title.
All right. I'm going to end this particular show. And once again, thanks, everybody.
Take care, Chris.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Hello all Paranormal Rundown fans, this is the third and final Avalon's educational moment. I'm sorry we can't squeeze in more, but my union contract limits me to 3 per episode. While Chris James will always be the great Southern saint of coffee, at least as far as the Paranormal Rundown is concerned, coffee actually already has a saint. That would be Saint Drogo. Not only is he the patron saint of coffee, but he is also known as the patron saint of ugly people, or people that others find to be unsightly. Because of this, Vic Hermanson definitely feels a spiritual attachment to Saint Drogo. Even though he does not drink coffee, he knows all about the physically unsightly part of things. We hope you enjoyed this week's Paranormal Rundown. We want to thank Chris James for appearing on the show. As usual, all of our music comes from Lobo Loco, Smart Sound, or was simply in the public domain. Please write to us to share your thoughts at feedback@paranormalrundown.com.